Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by and welcome to another one of the final parts of the 2025-26 Project Orchid videos. Now this is plant number 2, which was the Coelogene cristata, sort of, because it sort of changed partway through the project. The original one was Coelogene cristata, and it was the variety Lemoniana, which ended up on a mount to try and get it to grow. Partway through the project it just basically failed. So I switched the plant over to my other Coelogene cristata, the standard one. Although it does have a bit of a story. Have I got time to put it in here? I'm going to make time. This version of cristata, because it is a bit variable in the wild, so you get better ones and ones that aren't quite so good and things like that. There was a guy out in the Far East where these come from, and he was a bit of an orchid person, but that's not the reason he was out there. He was out there because he was a spy for the British government. So he was out there doing naughty deeds for the British government, and he came across this version of cristata in the wild, and this is going back a long time, so prior to CITES and all that sort of stuff, I suspect. And basically he saw this version in the wild, and it was a bit of an exceptional version, so he brought some back, and that effectively made its way to Simon Pugh-Jones in the Ritherlington project, which was, there's some videos back on my channel about that place. It's basically a school project where some glass houses were set up, filled up with orchids, and it became part of the school curriculum. And I think, oh, growing orchids is not a school curriculum. Yes it is, think about it. They had a laboratory. So you've got science, you've got biology, yeah? You've got conservation, you've got maths with all the feeding and the chemicals and new stuff like that. Plus you've got practical experience in horticulture. There was a lot of that project got included in the curriculum. You've even got chemistry, with the mixing up the chemicals for the feeds and stuff like that. So it was a very good project. Now Simon retired, and he managed to keep a piece of this particular cristata going, and that's a piece that I managed to get hold of. So that's the story behind it. Apparently the spy came back to England and became a senior position in either MI6 or MI5, one of those things that you know nothing about, just the name. That's all you're allowed to know. So that's the story behind the piece that I got. So I did say that these project final parts would take different formats. Now the last one was the Masdevallia. The format was the video clips, edited, so bits were taken off the beginning and the end just to leave the the main bit sort of thing. But nonetheless, because the plant didn't change much, and it was all video clips that were just looked like the same plant each time, it wasn't a very entertaining video. Come in. That's the flipping blackbirds chucking stuff off the roof again. They get up in the gutters and sort of root everything out looking for food. Anyway, so it wasn't a very entertaining video. It didn't get many views. Now that doesn't explain the logic, because views are based on somebody coming in and starting to watch the video. Well, if they don't like it much and they leave, it's still a view. So I'm not quite sure why we didn't get many views. I'm hoping for a lot more this time, because this is a much more entertaining plant, because you've got the change of plants part way through, plus this one came into bloom and the blooms are stunning, yeah? So hopefully this is a bit more entertaining. I've changed the format as I said I would, so some of it's the video clips, some of it's the comparisons, and So it's a little bit different, plus it's obviously a change of plant part way through. So as they say, without further ado, let's get going, and I'll be back at the end to look at the plant as it is today and have a quick chat, as if the roof doesn't come in, have a quick chat about how I think the plant's done over a whole year, and we'll have a look at it as it is now. So I'll see you at the end of the video. See you soon. Now, last time we looked at this, we had this strong new growth coming out here, which has now opened some leaves. We had another growth pushing on here, which is still pushing on. We had one pushing out here, which rotted off. But we now have a new one down here from this old bulb. Right, so we now have the potential for roots from this part of the rhizome upwards. This branch coming off here is showing no signs of life yet, but the bulb is still quite plump. These two bulbs down here are separate. They were buried in the pot basically, and they were taken out. They had a few roots on them, so they were added to the mount, hoping to get a new shoot and some signs of growth, none of which has happened. But what we do have, that we haven't had before, is root growth. So on this larger new growth with the leaves, we have some roots starting, 2 I believe. That is good news, because that means that at some point, probably in the autumn, I will take this off the mount, separate the rhizome here. We can probably discard the rest of it because it's not growing, and then this part of the plant can be planted properly in a pot. Now, okay, the growths won't be upright, but they will either straighten up or the next ones will. But the idea is to get some roots into a pot and get this to start growing properly. So that's that one. We do have some progress, so pleased with that. Okay, so plant number 2, which was the Coelogene cristata variety Lemoniana, has ceased to be. I've substituted it with my Coelogene cristata. So that's about as close to the other plant as you can get. It's just not the named variety. Now this plant I've had a while longer. It has a habit of climbing out of the pot, this one, and why I potted it like this is because of the way it was growing. Starting off with this nice plump bulb, the next one the growth split into 2. Yeah, so to keep this bulb, obviously the new growths are right on the edge of the plant now. This is going to have to be either repotted in a much wider pot, or it's going to have to be repotted with this bulb removed. This is not a good time to be repotting this plant. It's not currently in active root growth. Now, it has got roots in the pot, but they're a bit old and tired. But there are some active root tips. I would say not enough to warrant disturbing the roots. These do not like their roots being mucked about with. They can sulk quite badly. But what we've got as far as the plant is concerned, we do have, it's better to look from the side I think, the oldest bulb. That I would say is, along with this one, how big the bulbs can get. So when this division originally grew, the next bulb wasn't as big. It headed off in this direction and produced this bulb, which is not bad, and in the other direction it produced quite a weak bulb, but then it produced a good one, a whopper. The 2 leads have now both got new growths on that are not very large at all, but there was a repot around that time, so again, like I said, you disturb the roots at your peril with these. They don't like it. But what we've now got are 2 climbing new growths. They are both above the media. Now they're not attempting to root at the moment, and nor are the bulbs behind those new growths. There's no roots under this one. In fact, the branching roots and the root tips are off of old roots. They're not off the latest growths. So at the moment the latest growths have no new roots. I will probably repot this if it blooms after blooming, if not in relatively early spring before we start getting any temperatures climbing out here, so that it has a chance to settle in. And when I repot it, I will have to take off this old bulb, and we will get it down in the media by hook or by crook. But as far as growing is concerned, it has grown okay. It tried to produce a flower spike here but failed. It aborted and then immediately put up a new growth instead. Whether we get any blooms on this, I would find unlikely, but we will have to wait and see. It's a winter into spring type bloomer, not that variable. It does tend to stick to that time of year. So that's a new plant into the Project Orchids to replace the one that was lost. Basically the new growths just kept rotting and it never produced any roots. It was a failing plant, so it's been replaced by one that is at least progressing, if not that well, but there is some progress. So that's that one. No comparison on this one as it's new to the project. Okay, so plant number 2, Coelogene cristata. This replaced the Coelogene cristata variety Lemoniana that was mounted that failed. So I've replaced it with just the ordinary cristata. Now this plant does have quite a serious problem, which I can demonstrate in a minute. But as far as the plant is concerned, it does have some roots. But herein lies the problem. This whole section has got no roots underneath it whatsoever. So the roots emanate from right at the back of the plant and this section here. So all of the new growths, which constitutes 5 bulbs out of 7, don't have any roots under them. Now I think these do not like root disturbance for a start, but I'm going to have to do something with it. But the main progress on this is that we discussed the size of the bulbs last time, and we start with this initial bulb here, and then the plant split off in 2 directions, and we had some, not bad bulbs, and then we had this one good sized bulb and the 2 new ones which were very small. Well, they're not very small now. They're actually full size. In fact, I would say those are excellent plump cristata bulbs. And the observant of you will notice that both of them have a flower spike. I don't believe those are new growths. I believe they are flower spikes, despite me thinking that this was probably not going to bloom. But then I didn't expect the latest 2 growths to swell up like that, especially bearing in mind they're getting their nutrition and their hydration from these 2 bulbs, because that's the only place I've got roots. So all the roots in the pot are emanating from the back of the plant. That's got to change. That's got to change. So basically this is going to have to come out of this pot. I'm going to wait till after it's flowered, because once the flowers are finished it should start a new growth, and I think that this might actually trigger roots farther back on the plant. It's as though it roots 1 or 2 bulbs behind the latest growth and not under the latest growth. That's not fact. That's a supposition. Is that a big word? Well, it is for this late in the afternoon. Yeah. I'm going to have to... my mind is still geared up to the old, before the clocks changed. So I can get halfway through the afternoon and think, oh, I'll get on with that video now. Well, it's starting to get dark. So we need to get a move on. Anyway, I am well pleased with the latest two growths on there. Nice big fat plump bulbs, good pair of leaves on both of them, and we now have a flower spike on both of them. So it is going to bloom. But I would suggest that overall it's a relatively weak plant because it hasn't got a full root set. But that's something we can monitor as part of the project. When and where do new roots come on a rhizome that is totally devoid of roots? Right back to here. So literally all along here and all up here, no new roots. So I'm pleased with its progress, but I'm worried that it hasn't got a full set of roots. It has enough roots obviously to plump those latest two growths up and produce spikes, which is a little bit of a mini miracle really. But anyway, there we are. It's doing okay. Yeah, well pleased. Now, last time we looked at this, we had spikes, yes, but they were like this. Well, you'll see in the pop-up later. Whereas now the spikes are extending quite nicely, and certainly this spike will be in bloom in the not too distant future. Whether it will still be in bloom at the next update, I don't know, but I'll certainly do a video showing the blooms, and we can include that next time round if they finish before then. You're looking at, I'm doing these updates every 6 weeks. This is going to be in bloom quite soon. This one will take somewhere between 4 days and a week, I suspect, before it opens. So it's got to last like 6 weeks, or at least 5 anyway, and they might not last that long. But the plant's doing okay, apart from its lack of roots on the rhizome extensions, which the spikes are on, and there's still no roots coming from there. The plant itself has reasonable roots though. Okay, so I'll just pause so that we can put the pop up and let you have a look at what it looked like back in December. Okay, and then we come back. As you can see, there's no difference in the plant as such. The difference is the fact that the spikes have extended and will be open soon. So that's that one. Plant number 2 is my Coelogene cristata. Now this, the spikes had started to progress the last time we looked at this. No buds were showing or anything. The spikes were just extending after their initial growth, which tends to sit still for quite a while on these, and then they start to move, and then after that they come into bloom relatively quickly. This is holding its blooms quite well. This actually went into our show the other Saturday and got a 2nd in the class, which for such a small plant is actually quite good actually, because this is not a big plant. There's not much to it. It's got a few old bulbs with no leaves and 2 extensions, with nice big bulbs on the end, both with leaves, but that's all the plant is really. But we've got some reasonable roots in the pot, some of which are actively growing round the front here. What we don't have yet is roots growing from the front of these 2 rhizomes. Once it's finished flowering, I'm going to move it in the pot, which will probably mean taking the oldest bulb off. As long as that can come off without splitting the plant in 2, and then I can get it farther back in the pot and actually pin those rhizomes down so that even if they don't produce roots, the next bulbs will, and once these flowers are finished we should get a new growth. So this type of Coelogene, different to a lot of others. A lot of others put up what looks like a growth, and actually is, but it flowers out of the top and then continues growing and turns into the bulb. This type, however, don't grow like that. They appear to be similar at first, so they put up the same sort of thing and what looks like a new growth, and then the flower spike comes out the top, but then it dies. The growths are actually entirely separate. They do look quite different as well. And we should get our new growths once these blooms are finished, and I'm pretty sure they come out of the sheath on the other side of the bulb, from memory. That's a long time ago. Anyway, very attractive flowers. I'm glad it managed to flower as part of the project, and part of its evolution is that it was good enough to go into a show and get a second place. I don't mind coming second to the most gorgeous coleogyny that was about 2 foot across. Massive specimen plant, absolutely covered in blooms. That's fine. Anyway, that's that one. Progress is being made, albeit slow. These are not vigorous growers, although they can be once they head up to that specimen size. But they need the bulk. It seems like they need lots of old pseudo bulbs and lots of growths all going on, and then they move a lot quicker. But you know, this is still a relatively small division. So that's plant number 2. Okay, I thought I'd do the end bit a bit different as well. So rather than cluttering up the place with a blue board and doing all the sort of stuff I used to do as part of the project, we often look at plants by me holding them up and talking about them, so I don't see any reason why that's not on at the moment. So this is the plant as it is today. So let's have a look round the root system. As I go round, you can see there are reasonable roots in the pot, and all of those roots are coming from the back end of the plant. Yeah, they're not coming from the front end of the plant. I do still have this problem. Now at the front end of the plant we've got, these are the 2 old spikes that bloomed during the project. Yeah, they've just been cut off. They'll shrivel down. There's an old one here in the centre of the plant. They just sort of shrink back. So that's the end of those. They came and they went, and they were stunning while they were around. So what we've got now is the next set of growths. So we've got a new growth here, just pushing out. Notice that the spikes tend to come out of the side of the bulb, and the new growths tend to come out at the front. That's just a trait of this particular coleogyny. It doesn't stick to all of them, and not all of them have spikes that come out from the base. Some of them grow their spikes straight out of the top of the new growth, so they do vary. Now the main problem I've got with this plant is that this new growth here and this growth here, not only the bulb here but the one behind it, has no roots at all. So unfortunately it's not part of the project, but coming soon, because we've got new growth starting, this is going to get repotted in such a way that these extensions can be got down in some media, and hopefully get some roots going. Otherwise obviously these new growths are just going to be hanging off the edge of the pot. There is one here, although it's hiding. It's tucked in there. That one's tiny. This is not such a strong growth. It also didn't have as many blooms on the spike as a consequence. But the plant itself all started here, and then it split into 2. And the goal with cristatas is to get them to split every time they grow. So where there was 1 you get 2, where there was 2 you get 4. Now it's very difficult to achieve unless you've got a really good strong root system backing up the growth, which I haven't got yet, but I'm working on it. So anyway, as far as the project is concerned, this was a replacement plant, and during its time in the project it's done very well. I'm very pleased with its progress. What I'm not pleased with is the lack of roots. I will work on that during this current growing season, looking forward to a better root system when we go into winter, when we should have some spikes starting, as we did last time round, to produce some blooms February, March time next year. So there we go, that's what that one. As I said, I'm sorry the plant changed halfway through the project, but that's life. You know, not all orchids do well, not all orchids survive. That's the nature of the hobby, unfortunately. However, I'm hoping to do really well with this one. I've got friends in the Orchid Society that have got Coleogyne cristatas in, you know, the sort of baskets they deliver the bread in, you know, where they've got rows and rows of loaves. I've got friends that have got cristatas growing in those, and they filled it. That's a big plant. Takes several people to lift it. Mine's a long way off that, but I'll work at it because it's worth it, especially as this particular version of cristata is a little bit special with its backup story. Okay, so thanks for watching. See you next time for plant number 3. Bye for now.